So we're back. And so maybe on that note, John, you could just tell us a little bit about now, what is your role at Dorko? Because you are not only teaching online, which obviously has a tremendous reach, asynchronous, anytime, anywhere in the entire world, but you also do quite a bit of physical traveling also. What does that look like for you?
Yeah, I mean the job title they gave me was international product specialist, which basically I just think means they can send me anywhere, because it's international. And product specialist means I'm then supposed to know the answer, and know how things work theoretically. So yeah, I actually this week, I was checking in my diary. I'm supposed to be currently in, or I'm about to leave for Canada, because we were going to be doing a Yamaha summer school again. And I did the same 2 years ago, I think, where they had about 70 kids at a summer camp in Whistler, and we were, part of it was learning Dorico, part of it was lots of other music lessons and things they were doing with Yamaha music, and but of course at the moment in the current situation it's not able to happen. So at the moment I'm doing a fair bit more online, although it can vary day to day as to whether it's online one-to-one type sessions, online group sessions. We run the Discover Dorico sessions and do one a month for those live stream videos, and the rest of it is, yes, often training people as to they've been using it a while and they've got specific questions, or they want to get up and running, and if we're allowed to travel again ever, then it will be also doing those in person, so either in the UK or various places. So there's a new film scoring academy in Sofia in Bulgaria. We've trained them. Obviously, been to the US a few times, often at NAMM, trade shows like the Mesa and things like that as well. So yeah, it's but a lot of what I do actually is at the moment is training educators, whether they are, in some cases, now have Steinberg certified trainers, so I'm training people who are running Dorico training courses, and it's kind of like a train the trainer type thing. But often I'm running courses for either teachers who want to be one step ahead of their students, or sometimes teaching teachers and students at the same time, so they're all getting on board at the same time. But yes, a lot of our training sessions are like that at schools, universities, or what we call music hubs in the UK, where they're peripatetic teachers who need to create materials and that kind of thing for their lessons, and running training sessions with them. And at the moment, we've usefully managed to switch a lot of those to online. So I've done class training sessions with a class in Nashville, and then can switch to Northamptonshire and do something. So it's we could do lots of things that way. Wow. So and of course time zone wise it's earlier for you than it is for me right now, but yeah, generally being in the UK as we are, it's relatively well positioned to talk to Australians in my morning, and then talk to Americans in my afternoon. So yes, yeah, works fairly well.
Wow. So question for you, John, about teaching. I mean, you spend a fairly significant of your time teaching now. You're working with educators, you're working with students, you're making these online videos. Did you kind of just fall into that, or did you have it in the back of your mind that, oh, maybe I'll teach someday? And the reason I ask this is because when I watch your videos, I think ingredients for teachers is you want to be an expert in your field. You have an in-depth knowledge of what it is that you're trying to teach. But I also sense a very earnestness from you to want to help students. So when I see you answering the comments that are coming in, you're saying, oh, well, okay, let me dig into that a little bit. Even when I've asked you a couple questions, like, well, let me send me that note. Let me get back to you, and I'll get you the answer to that. Does teaching just come naturally to you? Did you think you were going to be a teacher, or did you just kind of find yourself where you are now?
I never thought I was going to be a teacher, and I'd previously tried to avoid being a teacher, at least as a profession. I suppose various people think, when they're at university studying music, for example, and things like that, I would like to be a teacher. And I was kind of thinking, I don't really want to be a teacher. I'd like to do something else.
I was the same way as well.
Right. Yeah. And I suppose that's, in a way, partly why I've always had an interest in technology and how things work. So I was more interested in, in that route of making things work. But I found actually what I do get a kick out is making things work for people. And it's the making it work for people bit that makes the difference. In that, yes, this knowledge is useless if I don't do anything with it. And the most useful thing actually I can do with it is give that knowledge to other people and solve things. And also from my background doing tech support, where a lot of it is somebody's got this problem, how do you fix it? And that kind of thing. And it's that it happens to be that's the kind of thing I tended to be good at. Is I've also been described, hopefully this is positive, as a dog with a bone, which is if you give me a problem, I'm not going to let it drop until we've solved it. And for some people that's annoying when they just say, okay, we don't care now, it's fine, we'll no, we will get to the bottom of this problem, we will figure it out. So problems like that annoy me unless I know what the answer is. This afternoon, I didn't tell you this, but I've been trying to work through a problem that a school has on their network, and no other school has this problem, and we cannot work, and it's actually not with Dorico either. It's with one of the other Steinberg bits of software, but we're trying to get to the bottom of, so it's what's different. I previously actually applied, well before Sibelius, for a job with BBC, and one of the things they were doing was about problem solving and and that kind of thing, and it's that kind of thing, but passing that information on to people and doing that. So yeah, that's actually where it comes from. It's a natural need to solve problems, I guess, and so part of that is how to train people better and how to get them up and running quicker, and what's the fastest way to get them from A to B, and also in some cases I have an unfortunate need to explain all of the reasons why to you, as to why you don't want to do it that way or this way, or why this is the best option, or when they say, oh, but I need to do it slightly differently, like with drum notation, there's always a slightly different version of something somebody wants, which is why you say, send me a file and I'll work out the best way for you to get from A to B, because it might not be the same as somebody else getting from A to their B.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think many people would argue your tenacity is a characteristic of solid teachers. You have to not give up on the student. If they don't get it the first time, or the problem isn't quite working out, you come up with a different solution or a tool to get them where they need to go. So on that note, you mentioned it a little bit earlier that there are different entry points for Dorico, and from my perspective, and this is why I'm so excited about this as a user, but also as a teacher and as a student, is you have these 3 entry points that maybe you could talk everybody through in just a moment. But even if you're coming in on that ground level, all the time and energy that you're spending learning how to use the system can then be leveraged into the next version or the pro version at the top. Could you just maybe tell everyone about those entry points and where maybe people could start to experiment with Dorko if that's something that they're interested in looking at?
Yeah. So, I mean, you can do, if you're experimenting, you can do a free trial of the pro version. But what a lot of people will do is try the free version, because it's unlimited. Then it's yours to keep. So it's called Dorico SE, which is Starter Edition. That one it's limited in that you can only write for 2 players. In Dorico, we talk about players rather than instruments. So it's the people you're going to give the music to, the players. Commonly, they only have 1 instrument each, but a sax player might double on something else. So actually, it could be multiple instruments the soloist is using and piano, 2 players. That's a deliberate reason, so that you can say you can write for piano and soloist. You can write for duets, though, that kind of thing. But all of the notation options you've got for the tools for editing things and and all those kind of things, for the note entry, all that stuff, live MIDI input, even play mode and all of the edits and things in there, that's all in that same version. All the buttons are in exactly the same places. It looks exactly the same, so that when you use that to initially try out Dorico, it's all in exactly the same places. In fact, it will trip me up sometimes, because if you're using the pro version, you can start it in one of the other versions, and if you're not paying attention, you can run Dorico SE, and then as you're doing something, you suddenly go, why can't I, where's the button for the, I'm running a different version, because they do look very similar. So the next version up from that is Dorico Elements, And Dorico Elements is designed for a kind of up to your classical orchestra, so 12 players. It's also a nod into education where in a lot of curriculums, actually, that's the kind of maximum number of people you would probably be writing for doing what we would call GCSE, high school type of music. Some of those levels, that's what they would need to write up to. And in fact, when we did the Yamaha Summer School again, I had a numbers of different of students from aged, I think the youngest was 7 or 8, up to 15 in various different classes, and they're quite happy using Dorico Elements for a lot of them. And a couple of the students in the top class would then go, "Oh, I can't seem to create any more players." So yes, you're the ones who've actually now reached that limit where you've now expanded the horizons of what you want to do, and you're kind of, actually, I'd like to add this kind of tone as well, and that's in Dorico Elements. Also, Dorico Elements doesn't have engrave mode, so the worksheet creation and the finer points of, I suppose the Elements version is good for, we've put some good defaults in there for how the music looks, and if for most people, they're fine. When you suddenly say, I'd like to change how that looks, I'd like to have more control over that, there are a few things you can do in Elements, but a lot of that's then when you start going into the Pro version. But also, if you've ever used another notation program, I'm only saying this because many people have, we have a cross-grade price into the Pro version, and for some people they've said, oh, actually I'm going to start in the either at SE or Elements, and then I'll upgrade to the Pro version. I said, well, only a kind of saving money warning, try the trial of Pro first because it's free, and if you like it and that's got everything you need in it, and you already own Sibelius or Finale, the cross-grade actually is probably your cheapest way in, really, into the full version, rather than doing Elements and then upgrading it. You might as well go straight there. So yeah, there are multiple options for that. And in a few people's cases, they've said, I've downloaded the trial version and I've tried it out, or I meant to. I downloaded it and then didn't quite get around to trying it out. Is there any chance I can do that again? It's, yeah. So if they get in touch with, we can always, extend their trial a bit longer, so they, there was somebody said, so I downloaded it because I was on maternity leave and I thought this was going to be a great idea.
First maternity leave, obviously.
Okay, yeah. All right, okay. And it's just, turns out my maternity leave, I expected to have, several weeks off before the new edition, and actually it turned out to be a week, and then, I didn't get really to do anything else for quite a long time after that. Yeah, okay, it's no problem. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
I think that's also a sign as obviously there's many different types of companies out there, but one of the things that has been very noticeable for me is that I'm talking to you now, obviously, and this is not the norm for most people who get a chance to speak with you directly, but every time I see an interaction go across online, I get the feeling that Dorko isn't this monster faceless business. There's always like a person on the other end that's very responsive to questions and comments that are coming in from the community, which, as quickly as you guys are moving and developing, you're still also keeping an ear to the ground of what's happening within the community, and how do we fold that in and serve the community.
I think we've always worked like that. So even before we were at Steinberg, that was the way we worked, and that was one of the things people liked about dealing with us previously. It's just in a way the way we are. Daniel won't thank me for saying this, but it's impossible to get him off a chat page. So he will read it. He will respond to things. It's just the natural way we are. It's not dictated from anybody else in the company that part of your job is to do this. It's actually not supposed to really be probably his job to do that, but it is a very good way to get information from the community. And similarly now on Facebook's more annoying in that it doesn't always show you everything in nicely sequential order. And there are some really good people in our community group now who will answer questions anyway. So yes, but community-wise, it is very important to us because, in the end, when you're looking for a musician to play in a band with you, it's not necessarily how technically good they are. It's do you get on with them, because you're going to be doing this a lot. It's a day in, day out thing. If nothing else, you could be stuck in a car with them for a long time before you even got to the gig, never mind playing. So, it's the thing about also the other things day to day. Yes, you're not buying into necessarily, a monolith type. It's not a small company, Steinberg, but it's those interactions with people, because we're genuinely interested. It's not because it's dictated to us. It's just that's the way we are, really. Yeah, and that's the way we work.
I have a question from a friend who is a longtime musician. He was a percussionist, was a teacher for 5-6 years, and then he did a career change and became a coder. And when I mentioned that he's also one of the people that I kind of look to and say, oh, what's new, what's exciting you, what's going on, and he's been looking at Dorko for as well. So this is from my friend Eric, and he has a question that says about the Dorko team. What decisions, technical and otherwise, did the Dorko team make early on that they think are paying off now? I don't know if there's an easy answer for that, because I'm sure there's lots of things that you guys are enjoying the reaping.
I myself wasn't there day one when the programmers started, because obviously they didn't need a product specialist then, because they didn't have a product. But yeah, I wasn't necessarily there on day one to know what some of those were, but I know that there are things that we talk about now, and we've talked about in the past few years when I have been part of Dorico, when they've said, well, the reason this works this way is because we've got this plan that we can't tell you about yet for where this is going. In fact, a good example was when we did the live stream for the very first version of Dorico in October 2016, and Daniel was doing the live stream, and somebody asked a question, and he kind of had that moment of, do I want to tell you this? Okay, between you and me, he says to a room of 100 people and whoever's on the live stream, kind of thing. We've got this idea, which and he explained then, this is kind of why some of these things are set up this way, because we've got this idea which we will aim to do as quickly as possible. And basically what he was describing then was partly divisi, but mainly condensing, and the condensing feature, which then came out eventually. Am I going to be tripped up if I say it was in Dorico 3, I think, the first time? Yeah, Dorico 3. So it's taken us a little while to get there, but these are the things that we put in place before that we've then been building on, and that's why, when we've done a new version of Dorico, it's not a complete change of the interface and everything else. We've added some new buttons to this panel which had space in it. This space, we planned for that. It's that kind of thing where we could look at it then and say, well, we need to do this, but don't forget we'll have to add. Okay, so we'll leave some space for that. We'll leave this. Yeah, and I'm not saying there aren't things that we've had to change. There are things that have moved occasionally, in the program and gone with time, because obviously we're still developing and we're still listening to people's needs as to, wouldn't this also be useful? But there are certainly things where we said, oh yeah, this particular thing that we originally planned back then, this is why it now comes into fruition later. So yes, certainly that makes a difference for the design of the program, the interfacing, the coding, and everything else. But no, I don't code anything myself. So yeah. I'll leave that with somebody else.
You explain what all the coders were intending and how mortals can use the the application.
I'm the translation between what they've done and what people want to be able to create and do. Yes, it's the translating between, if you like. That's why it's useful to be a sort of techie musician. So you can talk tech, you can talk musician, and you can put the two together. Yeah,
so important. One of the things I just want to highlight for everyone, because it took me a couple reads, and I've heard you talk about it a few times now. But for someone who might be looking at Dorko for the first time, you mentioned first that there's Dorko SE, which is the free version. And as someone who basically I spent the first 3 weeks using exclusively Dorko SE, because you just log on and I'm kind of blown away by how powerful the what some companies might call the light version or the free version is in itself. And for students who might be looking at this for the first time, if you had someone or a parent, let's say you have a friend of a student says, hey, I have a student who's looking at some sort of music notation software, what would you tell the student who is maybe considering Dorico SE as their first driver?
Yeah, well, the idea with Dorico as a whole, and so applies in Dorico SE, is that it's kind of teaching you as you go along, in that when you're writing even basic rhythms and things, Dorico will be rewriting that to make sure that the ties are correct, the note durations are correct. So you don't necessarily have to start it with an exact knowledge of the difference between 3/4 and 6/8. They to lots of people look the same, but actually they're not, because the note groupings are differently. And it's that kind of thing that even in Dorico SE, it will get right from the beginning. So you can just write the tune you've got in your head that you want to notate, and let Dorico do the difficult bits of that, and be safe in the knowledge that you're not going to get tripped up later when you then give it to somebody else, or you give it to your teacher who says, I've written this thing, and they go, oh yeah, but that bit's not quite right, and that bit's, that's the kind of thing that you don't have to worry about as much, because it will do those kind of things. In some cases, I know some people are probably watching the video going, yes, but sometimes I want that particular thing. Well, yeah, there is an override option, as we call forced durations, if you really need that, because when you do know what you're doing, then you can apply your own options for it. And so the lots of things in the Dorico preferences. I mean, the Pro version, for example, really has two sets of preferences. It's got the kind of what's happening right now and the global preferences. And it's those global preferences that you can't necessarily change in the free version. You can change the kind of just this one right now, please. And the power of the global system, where a publisher says, we always do it this way, or a teacher says, we always do it this way for this style. That's the kind of thing you can set there. But yeah, so the SE version is very good at being able to get the notation looking very nice from the beginning. We also spent a lot of time working out the things like the why the music looks nice on a page. What is it that an engraver did to make sure the music balances nicely and looks nice? And it's all down to the note spacing and the rhythmic spacing. And so that kind of thing is just automatically there in Dorico SE. You don't need to worry about it. It just automatically happens. In the Pro version, you can tweak it if you want to, change some of the other things. But in the SE version, you can just get into it and go, oh yeah, I don't have to tweak a load of stuff. It just, looks right. And doesn't take you a long time to get there. So versus, I suppose, there's always free software, and somebody says, yeah, but I can buy, I could use this other free thing. It's, okay, yes. A lot of the time, really, it comes down to, if you have a lot of time and you know what you're doing, you can make probably lots and lots of tools actually look correct. If you've got the time to spend on it. If you don't have the time, or you don't know what you're doing yet because you're learning, then you probably want something that helps you. When you're starting out, you want something that helps you because it's automatically correcting things for you, a bit like a word processor in autocorrect. And when you're a professional, it's the time saving that you want. You can probably create it in something else as well, but it's the time saving aspect of, I've got this job and they're paying me money to do this, and I need to do as good a job as possible, and I don't want to take a long time over it. And that's again what can make the difference. So I suppose another case is when you finish a score and then you're going to look at the parts. In some programs you go, take a deep breath. Okay. Now let's dive into the parts. And how long is this going to take? Yeah. And actually we fortunately get the other option now of you will spend a lot less time having to fiddle around with those kind of things. And if you apply that backwards to SE, you can be writing the things and have to. You won't have to spend a lot of time fiddling with things and changing things. So that's the kind of useful thing. However, also actually the SE version is also useful for some professionals, because the SE version can read any other Dorico file. So you can take a Dorico profile and it will open in SE. The only differences really are that if you've used more than 2 players, it will open as a read-only. So you can still play everything. You can still print or export any of the parts. So you can be writing, as a teacher, writing something in Dorico Pro, send it to a student, and they can still use the mixer and just listen to their individual bits to music -1. They can still, hear everything that's in there when it plays back, and they can also print their own parts, whichever instrument they're playing, or export them as PDF. So that can be very useful, and also very useful on the road sometimes when you just say, I just need to open this file and print this thing quick, or then the SE version can actually be very useful for that as well.
Wow. That when you first told me about that, that's something that kind of blew me away, because so often if you have a pro version and you want to send it to someone who does not have the pro version, you're handcuffed to a certain extent. And now that
I'll export it and save it as which version have you got? I'll just save you that one little bit and send you that.
And again, that time saving piece is one of the things that I'm sure, as all professions, but teaching for sure, and if you're a professional writing, composition, arranging of any sort, that time you're always working against that deadline and making sure that you're delivering on time. Another point about that it took me a few reads to realize this was, for Dorko Pro, you mentioned that there's that competitive cross-grade offer. And one of the things that I run into all the time with my teaching friends, and I tend to be this way as well, even admittedly on Sibelius, I was running Sibelius 6. I never made that jump over to 7 or 7.5 because 6 just did everything I needed to. I knew how to do everything. I knew how to look up the answer to anything that I didn't know how to do. But for many of my teaching friends, I'll talk to them and say, they'll send me something. I was like, what are you using? And they'll say, I'm using Finale 4.0. I was like, what are you talking? What are you talking about? You need to. It's 2020, man. Let's go. And so for those friends or teachers who maybe need some words of encouragement, and sometimes they say, should I not? Maybe the answer is you shouldn't change or upgrade. But for the teachers who are curious, they're interested, do you have any words of reassurance for those teachers of, maybe this is why you might take a look at Dorko, and now might be a good time?
Yeah, well, I mean, like we said, cross-grade price is a very good option, especially for teachers, because it's going to make it. You'd be surprised, actually, how little it costs, and especially on the multi-seat options. I mean, when we're talking to schools here, and they're saying, but we've been using. So, well, in pounds where I am, it's about £60 a seat for Dorico Pro, and they go, oh, okay. But for anybody, when they're thinking, versions-wise and anything else, we don't do anything subscription-wise. Steinberg asked all their users a while back, do you want subscriptions for software? And they overwhelmingly said no. We've, occasionally somebody will say, actually, I might want it. So maybe one day we'll do it as an option, but we're not, ditching the regular prices. So if you buy it, we always said, well, when a new version comes out, have a look at the features that are in it, and if they're useful to you, buy it. And if they're not, that's fine. You can just wait until we do another version later on and skip to that version. You're not kind of tied into a monthly anything or feeling that you always have to update things. So, for example, most recently, I was talking to somebody and they said, I've got Dorico 3. Should I upgrade to 3.5? So, well, actually for teachers, there's only probably a couple of things that you might need to worry about. Nothing wrong with Dorico 3 at all. Maybe you'd be fine. There's a couple of things that might be useful, like, for example, there were a couple of things I mentioned to him, and one of them was figured bass. Because some people, like me, I never really use figured bass because I don't really understand it. I sort of do, but I don't have to use it often enough. I'm really a jazzer.
Are we using it beyond our theory classes at the moment right now, honestly? We learn about it in music theory, and then you say, okay, and then we teach it later on in our careers as music teachers, but, you go to the gig, no one's handing you a figured bass sheet.
Well, that depends on the gig.
I guess that's true. We're doing our early music concert over here.
But for this person, they said, oh, well, actually, and they had a look at Anthony's video online about the options and said, actually, that's worth it alone for me. Just that bit, it's fine. And other people have said, actually, we don't need that right now. We don't teach that, and so we're fine with some of the options that we've got at the moment. So, yeah, it's. The same with staying on a particular version of Sibelius. Often there's a if that's what you're happy with and it does what you need, you will at some point probably have to update to something, because computers unfortunately keep moving on. Apple announced this week they're going to change their chips again, so there will be other versions, and at some point the computer you have, should it stop working, might not be able to run, your old version software on a new computer. And so we are finding at the moment that there are a number of people who are saying, I've got this old computer, but I'm aware when I buy a new computer, for example, a new Mac that wouldn't run Sibelius 6, I'm going to need to learn something. Do I spend the time learning a new version of that, or actually do I learn Dorico at this point? So for a lot of people at the moment, that's the kind of thing they are thinking about, is like you said, future proofing. Generally overall on future proofing, to kind of be software agnostic for a second, anything you do in a video editing program, an audio editing program, annotation software, a graphics package, make sure you save the file that you're using, obviously, but also save something in an open format. So, for example, for notation, actually save your whatever file and a PDF and a music XML file, because then, and potentially a MIDI file if you want as well. But when you get to that point in the project, especially, make sure you save a few formats, because in 10 years' time you should still be able to print the PDF, most likely. You can probably find something that opens music XML, because there's currently 250 odd programs that will open a music XML file, and similar with MIDI. And so, try and save things in an open format so that in the future you can continue in something else if you need to, whether that's Dorico or something else that you're using. So open formats are useful. The same with video editing software. Save a MOV file as well as the Final Cut file or Premiere file, or those kind of things. Save your Cubase project and save it out as a WAV file, or save stems. If you need to, as a future proofing.
That's a great pro tip, John. I feel like usually that happens for me workflow wise when I need the file, and then I've got to go back to the machine and say, okay, now let me export it. But if you just add that to your regular workflow, once you've wrapped the project, just have those file formats ready to go, and you'll be set next time.
Because it means you're not in the future going, right, so I've got an old version of this, which means I need to find an old computer that can still run that to be able to export the thing to get to the... Every now and then somebody will come to us and say, I've got this old version of Cubase. Can you still open a Cubase project from... Oh, Cubase has been around 30 years. I've got this Atari ST Cubase project. Can you still open it? Well, actually, when we did the 30-year anniversary recently, we resurrected a couple of Atari STs and had projects running in, most of it, Cubase 10 and on an Atari ST. And we've got some pictures from some of the trade shows we did of running an Atari something on it. But it's like, yeah, but it's not something you want to have to do every day. So
that's cool. That's a cool setup. Oh man, that's funny. Well, John, you've fulfilled your teaching quota for the day, because I wasn't expecting to get that little nugget. We're just chatting, and I haven't watched one of your videos yet today, and I'm getting it live on air.
Sorry.
So, last question for you, John. Again, thank you so much again for taking so much time to tell us about this and just give us more of an understanding, because right now I have like two groups of teaching student friends that I talk to regularly. One is maybe they ask about notation, and I say Dorko. They go, they've never even heard of Dorko yet, and they say, oh, what is that? And I say, okay, well, I'm using it because this, and this, and this, and they try it out. I have another group of friends who are longtime notation users, and it's like everyone is standing around the pool and saying like, oh, do you see that over there? And then some friends have gone so far as to go in for a swim, and they come back and say, oh, it's warm, it's not too cold, you try it, But everyone is kind of just watching, and they're ready to jump in, And for the arranging friends, they've listed one or two things that, oh, is it this or is this? And personally, I don't think anything at this point is like, I can't make that jump unless you're a working professional that's trying to meet a deadline and you don't have time for the learning curve piece. But if you've got the time to learn it, there's nothing that's a deal breaker for me personally at this point. But there are a few percussion specific questions that I've seen people ask. So maybe you could give us the June 25th version of where some of these things are happening. So the first one that I know we've talked about is the single tremolo playback. So as percussionists, if you're a percussion, for the non-percussionist viewers right now, If we're writing a string of 16th notes, you put a single slash. You want that 16th note to be a 32nd note, so it would read as da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And in Sibelius, you put in the slash, and it turns the 16th note into a 32nd note. Where do you see things with Dorko for that single tremolo playback?
And it does in Dorico, but I think you mean for tuplets.
Right, depending on the that's right. I actually worked for the 16 notes, but when you go into like a triplet or a sextuplet, yes, thank you.
So at the moment, yes, it'll all work if it's standard 8, 16th, etc. But on tuplets at the moment for playback, that particular case hasn't been put in. I think it may just be that it wasn't something that classical players do as often, but you do in drumline. I've mentioned it to our development team. It's actually something we're looking at the moment. I just can't tell you exactly when. But if you're watching it after June 25th, after today, at some point, in fact, I'll let you know as soon as it is. And I don't expect it to, I don't expect that one to be too long. But on June 25th, it doesn't work by default. Yes.
Great. And something that maybe is a little bit more commonplace is the stickings input. And you actually told me that there is a way to do this even now. But one of the things that percussionists will do is we'll input the stickings underneath the notes, and
so you got
R's and L's. But if you treat it as a lyric, for example, then it pushes the dynamic above the staff as you would if it was lyrics for a choir, for example. But you said there's actually a fix for this, right? Or a way for us to input stickings.
So at the moment, there isn't we have particular, there's an entry method for dynamics, and there's one for lots of other systems. So there's one for figured bass now, and there's one for chords and that kind of thing. There isn't a specific one for stickings, but it's sort of similar to lyrics and similar to a couple of other things, but different in a couple of different ways. So there's a couple of things you can do. There are actually a couple of stickings that already exist as playing techniques, so you can do them that way. But because playing techniques, you don't normally expect to have a long string of them that you're entering. That's more like a lyric type thing. You can put them in, and then you can alt-click or copy them to other places. In some cases, if you just need to show a couple of cases where you need them, that's one way of doing it. The lyrics option is another one. I don't think it will make the dynamics flip automatically. They will flip if you were on a singer. The dynamics would already be above.
Right.
And you can use F for flip anyway, to flip any dynamics that need to move out of the way. But you can use them as lyrics, which is fine as long as you don't also need any lyrics. So that's one potential useful way of doing it. But you will also find that with lyrics, because they have automatic options for things like melisma lines and things built in, if you're not putting in stickings on every single note, then you start getting these extra lines, and you have to go, oh yeah, I needed to not keep pressing the spacebar for that because I'll get these lines. So it's a useful quick method of entry with a couple of caveats, because actually they're really lyrics. So we're looking at the moment and talking to a couple of percussionists as well about actually what their needs are for this, so that we can build a proper feature for it, so that you're not feeling like you're using a bit of something else to achieve that thing.
Right.
So yes, we're at the moment, I can very, very easily do stickings that will look correct, but we think we could make them even easier. So that's our aim.
And the go-to at the moment, before that, there's a sticking devoted to it. Would it be lyrics? Is that your suggested mode of entry? Or
unless I'm only entering one or two, my normal go-to would be lyrics. Yeah. But what the trick is, so when you use the Shift L lyrics popover, because they'll automatically slow and everything else, you can change the font style if you need to for lyrics, depending on whether you want serifs or sans serif. So use the Shift L popover. But normally when you're doing lyrics, you type a word and you press the space bar to move on to the next note. But don't do that. Type R and use the right arrow instead to move on, because then it add the melismas. It's just moving on by beats or notes at that point, instead of pressing the spacebar to move on, which might add a melisma if you don't keep typing. So use L and R, but just use the right arrow to do it.
Got it.
And obviously capital letters, just stick caps lock on first. But,
right, perfect. There's the next pro tip for all the viewers right there: the arrow keys versus the spacebar.
They do slightly different things. So use the arrow keys.
Great, great. And then maybe the most common question that we get as percussion arrangers and composers is VDL bit, which has been a long standard for all of us to get that playback that we're listening for.
Yep.
Of course, you have teachers who are trying to create those MP3 playbacks for their students so that they can hear what they're kind of working with. Actually, I've encountered a few students who, out of a desire to hear what the music is, they haven't reached a point yet where they can just look at the music and audiate what's coming off the page. They rely on that MP3 playback. But also my professional working friends who are having to include an MP3 as one of the deliverables for a program that they're working with. I've seen, I think when I hear people mention this, they haven't seen some of the things like the templates or the videos, and I've seen some blog posts that you've actually done specifically for this VDL. Maybe you could just tell everyone a bit about the VDL state of things.
Yeah, so VDL by Tapspace is a library that's been around for quite a long time. And when I was getting some specific questions, probably well over a year ago, I think now, about some of this and how to integrate it. And it has some particular playback things that people need to be able to use, and also some particular ways of notating things for marching percussion. So I properly, donned the wellies and everything and jumped in with both feet to work out, what are the challenges. This is being a Brit, where we don't really do marching percussion in the same way you guys do. If we do it, normally the army are involved.
Okay.
So ours is obviously slightly different. We don't make a competition out of it normally.
Right.
So it's a slightly different world. So yes, I've learned a lot. I've also talked to Hugh from the Right Score about some of these kind of things as well, because he did a Sibelius template for it, and the Right Score did a Finale template for it, to understand some of the bits of how those things work. So what we've done to start off with is on our blog actually, so blog.dorico.com, or if you can Google for it, there is a marching percussion template for VDL now. So what I've done is set that up for snares, tenors, basses, and cymbals, with hopefully all the note heads you should need, and an easier note input method for those, but also paying attention to the fact that VDL has different playback for lefts and rights. Mm-hmm. So you don't have to notate them with stickings. If you enter the notes with the left and rights on as you're doing it, then it will play back those particular options. So with that in Dorico, what we have is a percussion map, where we've mapped all of the sounds in VDL as much as we can at the moment, and so that you can enter those notes and you can get the right note head with the right symbol mapped to the right sound that you're expecting. So at the moment, the template that you can download that I've made, and please let me know if there's any issues with it or problems, because obviously I've never marched in my life. Obviously,
not yet.
Not yet, because I'm in the wrong country. But yes, the idea is that if you're starting out actually doing this kind of thing in Dorico, start with my template, because there's a whole bunch of things that we've specifically put into that to work, that will work in the right way. And I've done some documentation with it as well that kind of explains how those kind of things work. What I'd then like to know is there anything in that I've got wrong, or that you want to change for any, I know some states do things in slightly different ways. Is there something missing, that kind of thing? That's what I'd like to know. There are a couple of caveats and things that I know we still need to add at our end. So if you're really getting into this, things like the tremolo playback on triplets, we're working on it. Also in VDL specifically, there are some of the sounds that actually only switch, not with key switches, but with the mod wheel and a specific mod wheel setting. And at the moment, it's not possible for us to add that into our percussion maps by default. You can still get the right playback if you tweak things in play mode, because you can draw in the particular controller messages that you need. But it's not, I want to make it as easy as, because I've written that note head, it automatically does all of the switching necessary. And that's what we do for a lot of other instruments with expression maps. So you're talking about people who want the correct playback. And that's what a lot of composers want, and TV composers and lots of people, film composers, who are writing things and they have to send a mock-up of what they've done. Absolutely, and that's what Dorico is set up to be able to do with a lot of libraries. But there are specific things in percussion that we now know we need to add a couple more tweaks to that for Dorico. So most of the things will play back correctly, and you'll be able to switch to rim shots and dreads and various other things. But there are some cases where playback-wise, there are things you have to tweak. And I believe, I haven't read them recently, but I believe I've put all of that in the documentation as to which bits you might need to tweak at the moment. And then I'll update it as soon as we have a new version. But yeah, I'd kind of also like to hear from people when they're using that to say, yeah, this really works, or this doesn't work, or there's a different way of doing it. Because obviously, not having the personal experience of doing these things, I'm learning from some of the people I've spoken to. Maybe they've got a different way of doing things to you. The percussion world normally has a different way of doing things to somebody else.
Sure.
The drummer conversations on Facebook generally are, my drummer is this person and he does it this way. Well, my drummer's more famous than yours, so he does it this way, and that's the way I want it.
Right.
So we try and make Dorico flexible enough to do that. So if there are other things that I'd certainly like to hear about them. But at the moment, if you're starting out, you already have VDL, you use it with another bit of software. Find our template. We can link to it if you want to, but you can look on our blog as well. Find that template and use that one to start off with. It's a Dorico project with those instruments already preset, the note heads all preset. I think they've got about 24 different note heads for each of the instruments all set up and ready to go, so that you can leap in without having to understand and set up all of that to start off with. And that's where I'd start.
John, for a saxophonist / pianist / bassist, when I hear you speak about percussion, you sound like a veteran marching percussion engraver. When you start talking about rim shots and dreads and things like that.
I've now at least tried to do some of those bits. So yeah.
And next time we're allowed to travel and you visit the States, if you are interested in strapping in and trying your hand at marching, I can set that up for you if you like.
I think it's probably more difficult than I. But yeah, I'll give it a go. Certainly, yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, we'll cut back to this clip when we get that future clip set up.
Yes. You remember that time you said? Yeah.
Okay, John. Final bit. So I'm an educator. I've watched the stream up to this point. I'm saying, okay, let's give it a go. What I want to do is be able to, on my current machine, learn and use Dorko. I need to map it to VDL, and let's say I don't have any of those things at the moment. Do you have just like a quick game plan of like how should I proceed if I wanted to do those 2 or 3 things?
If you just want to try out Dorico on your current machine, go to Dorico.com. You can download a trial from there for the pro version. You can also get the free SE version if you want to, depending on how many instruments. 2 players in the SE, full version in pro. Actually, the drumline template you would need pro for, only because it's got more instruments. But if you really want to try it out, I don't mind making you a smaller version with 2 players if that's what you need. But yeah, the trial version is fine. It'll run for 30 days. If you need more time, let us know. But go to Dorico.com because you can get that one. Blog.dorico.com is our blog, which will have the tap space marching template that I've done if you want to try that one out. And also has things like there's a getting started PDF I wrote of how to do a basic simple project, how to do a bit of basic note entry in the Dorico method. Teaches you a few shortcuts just to get you started, so you're not kind of getting frustrated with clicking around or anything else. If you are somebody who likes the video options, and actually you think, right, just tell me stuff for a bit, it won't be me either, it's Anthony, don't worry. On our YouTube channel, so youtube.com/Dorico, on there there's just a getting started playlist of a bunch of basic things, including how to install it, how to actually get up and running, and how to set up a lot of those basic things. And then what I do is, once you've kind of tried out either my basic project, the one online either, when you've tried out a few things, take a book that you've already got and say, right, I'm going to try creating this. Try a little project so that you've actually done it once and actually created something in another in Dorico, but copying something to start off with. That's where I'd probably start. You would probably be also tempted to take one of your existing files as music XML and import it. Absolutely do that. There's a couple of things, depending on where you're coming from and everything else, that we've also done videos about XML import and that kind of thing, if that's the way you want to go. So everybody's different. So we've tried to kind of work out with all of those, what are the options, what are all the choices of things you can do, and hopefully you'll find one of those. And if you're not sure, ask. Go to our Facebook group or the forum and say, hands up, I'm new at this. Tell me, what do I want to do? Send me a link, and do that. And we're here. So we have a friendly Facebook community, and you can find us on there, or like I said, the forum, or ask you. And you can send a message to me. It doesn't matter. Just ask. And we'll help you out with wherever you're at. And help you get started.
Fantastic. All right, John, thank you again so much for taking so much time to share all of your wealth of knowledge with us. If people do have feedback for you on that template, or they do have follow-up questions, is there a good place of contact that they could reach out to you?
Well, you can use any of those methods. Also, because when I did a video session about the template and kind of how to use it and that kind of thing, that was one of my monthly sessions, and they're called Discover Dorico. So those longer form videos are all in the Discover Dorico session and Discover Dorico series. So you can email discoverdorico@steinberg.de, and that comes through to me as well. So yes, if you want to try that out, then Discover Dorico is all one word, and you can just email discoverdorico@steinberg.de and say, so I've tried this and I've watched this video and now I have this question about, you can get in touch with them by email as well.
Great. And we will put all the links for those posts and for John's contact information in the description below, so you can look below for that. And hopefully this has been such a pleasure, John. Hopefully we can do this again sometime in the future. I could talk to you for another 2 hours, but you have to prepare for your next stream, I'm sure, at some point. All right. Thanks for watching, everyone. We will see you in the next episode. If you have any questions or follow-up comments, we'd love to hear from you in the description below. And we'll see you in the next video. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.